Today, rookies reported to Miami Dolphins training camp. So what now? And is Jonah Savaiinaea going to practice when the time comes? We'll discuss that. Also, could the Miami Dolphins offense benefit from being a little bit more boring? We will discuss that, plus a whole bunch more, including a promotion on the Dolphins coaching staff, which could indicate they're taking the running game a little bit more seriously this season. We'll talk about it all. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Field on the near side, that open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. As can you smell that? No, it's not the BS from all the people out there spinning their narratives and spewing their agenda-driven takes. It is the fact that football is almost back. You can smell it in the air, as the rookies reported today. So we got a lot to talk about. And we'll get into all that. Before we do, though, do me the favor, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. If you get the chance, I believe the dive bar is going live tonight. Let me see who they have. I haven't really been on social media today, so I don't even know who they have. They got Hayden Rucci coming on tonight. That's what Bobby told me. So go check them out. They'll be live tonight, and they'll have Hayden Rucci on the show, all right? Now, moving on here. A few things. Number one, the dog was right again, huh? Who saw the money that just got handed out to Sauce Gardner? He signed a $120.4 million extension over 4 years. He's now the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. He's making $30.1 million per year. $60 million of that 120 is guaranteed. I mean, I know other people fear him or prop him up, but when you got Jalen Waddle, who owns legitimate stakes in the New York Jets, and let's be honest, he's had Sauce Gardner on the rotisserie ever since they started facing off. I'm not worried. Like, that's fine, pay him. Now I see Dana says, oh my god, these contracts are dumb. This is what's happening with the cap rising, right? We've talked about how the cap is supposed to go up significantly each year, and remember, it started before last season. New money coming in through TV deals, etc. Remember, like last offseason, the cap went up, like $30 million, something like that. And it's expected to rise around that for like the next, after this season, another 2 or 3 years, it's going to go up. Remember, we talked about the fact that the cap was going to jump from like $240 million to like $360 million probably in like 4 years. And this is just, the fact of the matter is, let's be real. You think these contracts are stupid. What do you got to say about NBA contracts or baseball contracts? Baseball players, sure, they play 162 games a year and then the playoffs, but what takes a bigger toll on your body? 162 games of baseball or 17 games of football, including the playoffs? That's the issue. Like, I think, go look at NHL players. NHL players are ridiculously underpaid for having to play 82 games plus that grind of the playoffs, to what it does to their body. I mean, these guys, I look at football players and hockey players, these guys are sacrificing their quality of life from their 40s on. I actually think hockey players and football players should be the highest paid athletes, not soccer, okay, because we know how much money soccer, I mean, if you want to go really, cringe and fall out of your chair at soccer contracts, go look at soccer deals. Go look at how much Cristiano Ronaldo is being paid to play in Saudi Arabia. All right. So I think, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, here's an example. Look at the salary cap in the NHL. The salary cap in the NHL isn't even $100 million. Right? It's supposed to be what? Like, I think they're projecting it to be, I think, what are they? I think it's going to be like 95 million next year. That's coming up. Last year was 88 million. A couple years ago it was around 80 million. Like we're talking like almost a 4x on the NFL, and it's just because of revenue. It's a 4x on the NFL's salary cap, basically. I think where, the NFL is heading is, I've already talked about how, remember they increased like 24 million this year. So they're at like 28 million, almost 279.2 million is the salary cap in the NFL right now. But I think, are they going to eventually head to a luxury tax? I don't know. I think they should be paid more. Now it's 279 million this year. It's projected to go up to like 295 million next year. And then the year after that, it's probably going to cross into about 320, 315. So by the 2027 season, you're going to have a $315 to $320 million salary cap in the NFL. That's why you're seeing these contracts rise, because these guys are getting out ahead of it and getting their money now. Shout out to Easy Sparks. He upgraded his membership to All Pro. Appreciate you, Easy Sparks. Thank you for supporting the channel. It does mean a lot. All right, now let's talk about, we're not done talking about contracts. Raise your hand in the chat if you saw the deal that Trey Smith just got in Kansas City. Trey Smith got a 4-year, $94 million deal with $70 million of it guaranteed. I'm telling you, the Robert Hunt deal doesn't seem so bad right now, does it? Right? And that was a player I said we needed to retain. I mean, you wouldn't have had to spend the money on, well, it wasn't much, but you wouldn't have to spend anything on James Daniels and Jonah Savaiinaea, and Robert Hunt could have been your interior on Aaron Brewer. Instead, now I know it's a little bit less in terms of total and stuff like that, but, Trey Smith is a damn good player. And this is where the trenches are heading. I've talked about this since, Christian Wilkins, when people were denying me and Neil's report that he was asking for over 22 million. People were like, oh, you're lying. And then we ended up being dead on. I was telling you 2 years ago that this is where it's heading. The trenches are about to get paid. And why has this happened? Because we've gone in the opposite direction by paying outside and working our way in. The NFL over the last 2 years, and again, we've talked about this channel, about this on this channel ad nauseum. The NFL the last 2 years has become more power run, right? Like that's the way this game is headed again. I mean, you saw the Bills got rid of Stephon Diggs. What did they go? Became, James Cook popped off and they became more of a power run team, right? What have the Kansas City Chiefs turned into as they've spent more money in their offensive line and let a guy like Tyreek Hill go? Look at how much they've spent on trying to get that backfield right. I mean, whether it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco, whatever the case you want to say, they've continued to try and get that backfield right. What put, the Eagles over the top? Saquon Barkley, right? The run game. I mean, this is a trend, and we're behind the trend, not in terms of the stable of running backs we have, because I think we got all the talent in the world in the running back room between Achane Wright, Ollie Gordon. I think you got a ton of talent there. It's you're not helping them out. This is why when I talk about the offensive line, people try to spin it. Oh, they use the offensive line as an excuse for Tua, blah, blah, blah. But I always make sure when I talk about the offensive line, I always make sure to mention the run game. Right? Because if you don't have a good offensive line, you need guys that are uber creative in terms of yards after contact, and you need guys that are uber creative behind the line of scrimmage because they're going to run into a lot of problems. And there's few runners in the NFL and in NFL. Not everyone is Barry Sanders. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with that. This is just the trend right now. Defensive tackles are being paid heavily, and interior offensive linemen are starting to be paid heavily. And really, 2 Dolphin players started kicking off those large contracts, and former Dolphin players, in terms of Wilkins and Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt leaves and gets a Pro Bowl nod right away. This is just where the way the NFL is trending right now. Right? You're seeing safety kind of being treated like how the running back room used to be treated. People aren't prioritizing safety as much anymore. You're seeing certain trends, and it happens, right? Every, in between 5 to 10 years, you see new trends emerge and new trends pop up. And with the money that's being handed out to these interior players, this should be even more reason to get Zach Sealer done right now and not sit on your hands. Like, this should be a wake-up call that you need to take care of Zach Sealer. Not sit on your hands. And just say, well, let's see how Kenneth Grant goes, because then that'll make Sealer expendable. That'll make Sealer expendable. No, Sealer needs to retire a Miami Dolphin. You need to take care of this guy. Period. And you need to do it before he has another great season and demands a whole ton of money that he rightfully deserves. Let's be honest here. So the money is being handed out right now all across the board. Good Lord. Now, we're going to get into training camp here. And before we do get into training camp, I don't know if you guys saw this too, but the Cincinnati Bengals, first round pick, Shamar Stewart, he left the team and he's gone back to practicing with Texas A&M. Shamar Stewart, we've been following this drama on this channel for some time since it all started. Didn't like the language, the wording, and how they weren't willing to guarantee his contract with the Bengals. And now he's taking it to a next level. He's back practicing with Texas A&M. Now, what would happen is he can't play. Like, he can go back to school at Texas A&M, but he can't play. He can't, because he's been drafted, he can't play. So basically he would have to sit out the whole season. Now, again, he would be ineligible to play for Texas A&M, but he can go back and he can take classes, sit out the whole year, and then re-enter the draft next year. So the Cincinnati Bengals, their cheapness has finally caught up to them. That's crazy. Shamar Stewart is back practicing with the Aggies, but he cannot play with them. Man, wild. Wild, wild, wild. All right. Now, Dolphins rookies reported to training camp today. And I want to just give, I've had a lot of questions about, what now, blah, 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 all that jazz. So, basically, this is how it's going to work, all right? So, you're not going to really have them ramp up until next week. What's going to happen is the veterans are going to report next Tuesday. So on the 22nd, I believe, is when they report. The first 3 days, there's no contact, right? It's just going to be, physicals, film study, meetings, all that kind of stuff for the first 3 days. Then days 4 and 5 are when you can basically, the helmets come on and, you got the shells and the light practice gear and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be day 4 and 5. And then day 6 is going to be a mandatory day off. And then day 7 is actually when padded practices can begin. All right. So about 7 days after reporting. Just an FYI for all of you guys. So I've had a lot of questions about, will there be, practice reports, all that kind of stuff. Now, and like, just for an example, last year, the veterans, I believe, reported on the 23rd and the pads came on the 29th. All right. Now with Jonah Savaiinaea. I think, I haven't really checked in today with anyone, but from what I understand, the expectation is he's going to report. Where the issue is going to come in is when the light practices start next week. Right? If you do the math, light practices, when's the first training camp open to the public? If you do the math, basically we need a deal done next week if we want to guarantee and ensure that this man is going, that he's going to be ready to go. Now, the 26th, so Saturday, is the first training camp open to fans, and then they're back on the 28th and the 29th and the 30th. And then the 1st and then the 2nd. So, I think it was like day 5 last year. I want to say day 5 or 6 that the pads came, that I don't know. I got to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it was like day 5 or day 6 the pads came on. So, with Jonah Savaiinaea, I mean, he's been active. He's been fully involved up until this point. I mean, I know Dolphin fans are going to make it about, we're not the only team dealing with this. I mean, there are 30 unsigned second round picks right now. Right? And one of them, Trey Harris, is holding out of Chargers camp. And another one in Quinshaw Judkins is dealing with some serious charges that have been levied against him. So you want to start seeing resolution across the league because clearly this is a movement. Clearly this is a coordinated movement. So you want to, and I don't know whether it's, they got every second round pick in a room and said, this is what we're doing, or they got every agent of every second round pick, on a conference call and said, hey, this is the stand we're taking. I don't know. I don't have that answer. But you're going to want to see some of these guys start dropping off the board in terms of either signing their fully guaranteed deal or not signing their fully guaranteed deal, but putting ink to paper. Because if we're sitting here next Tuesday, and the veterans have reported, and still we've got 30 unsigned second round picks across the league, that's not great. Let's be honest here. So, but I want Dolphin fans to keep this in perspective. This is a league-wide issue, not a Dolphin-specific issue. So, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. We just got a whole bunch of people here that I don't know. I'm not overly encouraged right now until I see this start to happen. I don't know. Now I know what's happened is you can report. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive you can report, but you can't actually start participating in practices at training camp if you're unsigned. Without a deal, you cannot participate in training camp practices. Now, in terms of reporting, there's no practices today, right? They're coming in, meetings, all that kind of stuff. So, I know they can't. I know if you're unsigned, you cannot participate in practices at all. So, we haven't got any word leaking out. We haven't got any word leaking out. So I don't know. We'll see. I know with mini camps and OTAs, it's, you can attend, no problem. All right. But when you start getting into the practice of training camp, you cannot take part. What type of contract? They're just looking. All these guys are looking for fully guaranteed. All these guys. Yeah. You can show up and you can stand around and twiddle your fingers and do all of that. You can be in the building, but you cannot partake in any of the training camp activities. It's the same thing for all these second round picks. They want fully guaranteed deals. That's what this whole stand is about across the league. They all want fully guaranteed deals. And I told you, when, people were blowing me off when I brought this up and Jaden Higgins and Carson Schwessinger signed that, people were like, oh, reason, no, this isn't a concern. I said, no, this is going to be an issue. And in a couple years, third round picks are going to want their contracts fully guaranteed. This is where we are headed. Deshaun Watson's deal has screwed all this up. And the NFL owners are trying to stave off fully guaranteed contracts, and they have been for years, but it's only going to go so far. And the problem is, the problem is, okay, they caved to second round picks. Now, next is the third round picks, and it's just going to be a cycle. And another issue they're going to have is everyone and their mother knows the cap is raising $25 to $30 million over the next 3 years. What excuse are you going to have? Right? Like, what excuse are you going to have? So, I hope this gets done. We need Savaiinaea out there. We need him getting acclimated to this offense, getting comfortable in this offense, especially when those pads come on, man. We need him to start feeling that pop, right, of NFL defenders. So, and NFL speed. So, yep, that's where we're at with training camp and Jonah Savaiinaea. He can report and he can twiddle his thumbs, but he will not be able to participate in practice. So, I don't know. I think, this isn't going to be an individual thing. You're going to have to see dominoes start to drop with second round picks. Could Savaiinaea be, the first one out of the gate? Maybe. It's possible. But we'll see. So, man, all I know is in a week, the veterans report, and, the week after that, I mean, let's be real here. By July 29th, in 2 weeks, we know those pads are going to be on, baby. So, I'm just excited that it's finally here. So, this weekend we'll be previewing the defense and special teams. I'll have all 22 and in-depth reports on Kenneth Grant and Dante Trader. And then we'll be getting into, training camp battles I'm excited about, and a whole lot more. So we are here, baby. We are here. August is right around the corner, and that means preseason football is right around the corner too. So, all right. Peter Schrager on Get Up today, and I want to get your guys' thoughts in the chat. He said the top 5 most pivotal players in 2025. Number 5, JJ McCarthy, obviously because of them moving off of, Sam Darnold. A lot has been invested into JJ McCarthy. He's coming off an injury. That makes sense, right? Christian McCaffrey. I mean, is his body going to start slowing down? We saw, how hard it was and how instrumental he was towards the San Francisco 49ers. It was hard for them to be successful without him, and he was very instrumental to their overall success. And Purdy looked like, he took it was a tough season for Purdy without Christian McCaffrey as well. Number 3, Aaron Rodgers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have made a big deal about this. If Aaron Rodgers, something happens to Aaron Rodgers, they got to lean on Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. So is he going to be more so, ironically enough, the guy they saw with the Jets in the final game of the season against the Miami Dolphins that was on point and shredding us? Or is he going to be that up and down player that they saw for the majority of last year with the Jets? We'll see. Number 2, they got Tua Tagovailoa. Now, you could probably make the argument Tua is number 1 on this list because we've seen McDaniel looks like a fish out of water when he doesn't have his quarterback 1. The offense, I mean, is there a better term than all out of sorts without him? I don't know. But the offense looks stagnant. It looks remedial. It's the type of offense that'll get McDaniel fired. Like if Tua goes down, man, there are going to be heads rolling potentially at the end of the season. Not only is Tua Tagovailoa pivotal to his team's success, he's pivotal to some of these guys keeping their jobs in the building. Right? Let's be real here. And he got Jared Goff at number 1. I mean, yeah. I mean, that team is just so stacked across the board. But, I mean, anytime you lose your quarterback, who knows? But Jared Goff, he's instrumental to the success of the Detroit Lions. But I don't think he's as instrumental as Tua is. Hell, I don't even think he's as instrumental as McCaffrey is. I think McCaffrey and Tua should be 1 and 2, really. Tua Tagovailoa, man, it is a pivotal season. And clearly he's being recognized as a pivotal player to the Miami Dolphins' success this season. And like I said, he's going to be pivotal to some of these guys like Mike McDaniel and potentially Chris Greer, and maybe even that whole coaching staff keeping their jobs beyond this season. So, I mean, we will see how it all plays out. But put in the chat right now, who are your most pivotal players to their teams in the NFL? Give me your top 5 most pivotal players in the NFL. Do it in the chat if you're watching after the fact. Go ahead and leave a comment. I want to hear who you guys think are most pivotal to their team's success in 2025, because there's a lot of cases that could be made. I mean, we didn't see the Eagles win a Super Bowl until that boy Saquon showed up. Is Saquon pivotal to their success? Patrick Mahomes, I'm shocked he's not on that list, because without Patrick Mahomes, what happens in Kansas City? So I want to know in the chat, who are your top 5 most pivotal players to their team's success in 2025? And I'm going to be honest with you, we're Dolphin fans. I expect Tua to be on all of your lists. We've all seen how this offense operates and the lack of efficiency put up by it when Tua's out compared to the uber efficiency that can be put up by the offense when Tua is healthy and in the lineup. So, shout out to Peter Schrager. I always love his stuff, man. He does great work. So, all right. We got a long one. I've actually been meaning to get to this and I've had to push it back. Like, I meant to get to this last week. And this is an article on The Athletic, so it's behind a paywall. All right. Shout out to Kel Al. There you go. Tua Mahomes. I like it. Lamar, that's a great one. What if Lamar goes down? You know what I mean? Tua Mahomes Burrow. I love it. Love it. So it's behind a paywall. And this is from Ted Wynn over on The Athletic. And I really want to read this in depth for you guys. It's long, but it's very detailed and very informative. So, why Mike McDaniel's Dolphins offense could benefit from being a little boring. Miami Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel is one of the most creative play designers in the league. He's a trendsetter to whom other coaches look to copy plays into their offense. However, that ingenuity hasn't translated into real success for the Miami Dolphins. Even at their best, they've been a fun, explosive offense that lacks the necessary components to compete with winning teams. Again, that's what happens when you build from the outside in and everyone else is building from the inside out, defensively and offensively. Despite making the playoffs 2 out of the 3 seasons of McDaniel's Dolphins tenure, he is on the hot seat. There have been questions raised about the team's culture. Only the team knows how valid those concerns are, but the manifestations of a weak culture have been evident. The biggest one is their inability to beat winning teams. In McDaniel's tenure, the Dolphins are 6-15 in the regular season against teams with winning records, 0-3 in games when quarterback Tua Tagovailoa didn't start. It isn't just a matter of bad luck. The Dolphins don't do things that good teams do. They commit penalties at the 7th highest rate in the league and have the 10th highest rate of negative plays. They create explosives in the run game, but they don't run the ball with physicality. Since 2022, they rank 31st in conversion rates on 3rd and short and 4th and short plays. They've gotten progressively worse in the red zone and finished 31st in red zone touchdown percentage last season. They also finished last in success rate on runs against stacked boxes. Many of their issues stem from physicality, and it begins with their offensive line. Terron Armstead, their best lineman, retired this offseason. The unit has also dealt with several injuries in recent years, including Armstead missing 13 games over the past 3 seasons and has lacked the depth to cope with those losses. To me, I'm excited because I think we have a tangible opportunity to improve. That starts in free agency with a couple of guys that we have targeted that you think you can get a deal done with them, and that continues into the draft, McDaniel said before the draft. I think it's a very good time to have some need. It's time for us to invest in that position, and we're excited to. I would expect it to surface in both free agency and the draft. Chris Greer echoed these sentiments and backed up his words with action. They signed guard James Daniels from the Steelers in free agency. Daniels is a mauler who could give the Dolphins the physical presence they need, but he's coming back from a torn Achilles, so there's some uncertainty about the version of it Daniels will see this season. Side note, this is what I've been telling you guys, right? You got to prepare for the fact that if this guy looks like a guy coming off fresh of an Achilles or he isn't ready to go, you better have a better backup plan than Liam Eichenberg. Let's be honest. Right? So, Greer also traded up in the second round to draft Jonah Savaiinaea. They'll join center Aaron Brewer, who's an effective zone center, and right tackle Austin Jackson, who is a plus starter but has injury issues. The biggest question is at left tackle. Greer drafted Patrick Paul in the second round last year to be Armstead's successor. Paul certainly has the physical profile and movement skill of a prototypical left tackle. Still, it remains to be seen whether he's ready to fill the considerable void left by Armstead. This line has the potential to be the best one that McDaniel has had, but they need Daniel's recovery to go smoothly, Jackson to stay healthy, and Paul and Savaiinaea to grow up quickly. All right, so you see this right here. They got the motion right here. Got images to go here. Here's an example of McDaniel's creativity. The Dolphins came out in pony personnel, 2 running backs on the field, with running back Raheem Mostert in the backfield and Devon Achane in the slot. After shifting tight end Jonnu Smith from the left to the right, from the right to the left, Achane went into orbit motionless to the left before reversing back to the right. Smith's job, and you see right there the toss, right? And from the slot, you can see right there. Smith's job was to crack the defensive end from the slot for the right tackle to pull around him and lead for Achane, who was getting the toss while reversing field out of his motion. This is one of the many plays the Dolphins have designed to freeze the defense with eye candy and get the ball outside. Aside from adding to the talent on the line, they need to emphasize the desire to run inside. The offense is built on outside runs and tricking the defense. Those elements will always be a part of the offense, but they need to use inside run more, not just when they desperately need a yard on third down. Last season, McDaniel did try to call more interior runs, such as wham. However, they still ranked 28th in gap scheme usage. Another issue they have in short yardage is that they are in shotgun or pistol formations far too often. They lined up in the shotgun or pistol last season at the 5th highest rate in the NFL and led the league in 3rd and 4th and short situations. The only teams that should be in those formations in short yardage situations are option teams with mobile quarterbacks that utilize their designed quarterback runs out of them. Still, Tagovailoa isn't a running threat due to his concussion issues. Though quarterback sneaks aren't much of a threat either because they don't want Tagovailoa slamming his head into the teeth of a defense. Getting under the center allows the back to get downhill and makes him a threat to any gap with speed. It has become increasingly complex to run outside as Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio's scheme continues to proliferate in the league. Defenses are playing with light boxes, but when you run inside, you give time for the secondary support players to enter the run fit. Elite offenses are having success punishing light defenses with gap scheme runs. I'm not suggesting that the Dolphins overhaul the scheme, but crank up dial on gap scheme runs so the line can get reps running them. Allow your line to fire off the ball and express physicality so that when you need that 1 yard, they have confidence to get the push they need. This is the type of play that Dolphins need to put more emphasis on. They are running duo, a play described as power without the puller, but they are running it with a tight end quick motion. Sean McVay started doing this with the Rams. The motion doesn't give the defense a chance to adjust to the changing formation strength and gives the tight end a running start to block the play side end. Paul got driven into the backfield, which forced Achane to change directions too quickly and didn't allow him to create momentum at the line of scrimmage. Receiver Jalen Waddle couldn't get into his blocking assignment from the perimeter. The tight end couldn't block the strong safety, and Paul got beaten. This is an example of how the team needs to improve at executing interior runs. Teams like the Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers, and Los Angeles Rams don't get just their physicality from their line. They also have hard-nosed skill players. 49ers had Deebo Samuel impose his will on secondaries for years. The Lions have David Montgomery as part of their Thunder and Lightning running back duo. The Rams have always had receivers who run block like tight ends. The Dolphins emphasize speed over everything. Tyreek and Waddle give them a unique 1-2 punch outside. Achane is explosive as any running back in the league, and he has legitimate slot receiver skills. McDaniel wants backs who can outrun defenders to the edge, but they need a back who can add a punishing element to their offense. Maybe the 6th-round draft pick Ollie Gordon could be a nice compliment to Achane and allow him to play on the perimeter more. Gordon was regarded as one of the top backs in college football, but he fell in the draft after a down year. Signing receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine gives them a solid blocker on the outside, but the question for them is who will be their blocking tight end. Jonah Smith, who was traded to the Steelers in June, wasn't an overwhelming blocker, but he was effective at what the Dolphins asked him to do, crack and seal defenders in the slot. Darren Waller, who the team just traded for, came out of retirement after admitting that he decided to retire after being asked by the Giants to lead block on a counter run 3 times in a row. Blocking was never Waller's strength, and at his age, the Dolphins shouldn't expect much effort from him. Having a strong blocker to seal edge defenders is essential for most outside zone offenses. The 49ers have George Kittle, who is one of the league's best blocking tight ends. Tight end Durham Smith did a decent job in that role, but was released in February. McDaniel uses fullback Alec Ingold, one of the best in the league, to help block edge defenders. The Dolphins signed Pharaoh Brown to be their blocking tight end, but this offense will be siloed with Brown as the blocking tight end and Waller as the receiving tight end. The team will depend on Westbrook-Ikhine, Brown, and Gordon to add physicality. Ideally, you want it from your best players, but understandably, this offense is built on speed. The Dolphins ranked 32nd in success rate of plays run against single-high defenses, meaning defenses did not respect their run game and played 2 safeties deep to neutralize Hill and Waddle. It's not as if the Dolphins were unwilling to run, but they have to change how they run the ball. They must put a bigger emphasis on gap schemes and running inside. Much of their offense revolves around getting outside and creating displacement with motions and fakes. However, the constant movement makes it difficult for offensive linemen to block moving targets as defenses constantly adjust. Please don't lose that creativity, but sometimes it can help to simplify. Get under center more in short yardage situations. For McDaniel to keep his job, the offense must be one of the best in the league again and perform when it matters most. For that to happen, the offense has to mature and become a little bit more disciplined. Miami has some of the necessary tools, but also require a philosophical commitment. And again, we've talked about this on this channel, about the philosophical foundation of this team. This is the result of building from the outside in, while other teams in the NFL are building from the inside out, both defensively and offensively. And I talked about this at the start of this show. The Bills have made that change, right? They got rid of Stephon Diggs, made that change. Tyreek Hill leaves Kansas City. They make that change, right? With Pacheco and everyone they got back there. You know, Hurts and that dynamic passing offense, you know, with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, they couldn't get it done in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. They go out and get one of the best running backs in the league in Saquon Barkley, and boom, they're unstoppable almost, right? Because, again, but we go back to philosophical commitments, like Ted Wynn said, as well as philosophical foundations like I've talked about, all right? And I'll give the examples that I always do, all right? The Eagles, since Andy Reid was there, they've had stout offensive lines. I mean, I want you to think about this. Go look at the top offensive tackle list that ESPN just put out. You want something that's really going to kick you in the gonads? I'll give you one. The top 3 players on that list, the Dolphins had chances at. Tristan Wirfs. Dolphins tried to trade up. That's why Tampa traded up one spot with San Fran, because we were the ones trying to trade up for Wirfs. But we didn't want to throw in an extra mid-round pick to get that done. Fail. Hey, Penei Sewell, number 2 on that list. Who was leading the Penei Sewell train over a year before that kid even hit the draft cycle? Me. And I had people, oh, we got Robert Hunt. And I said, no, Robert Hunt, he's going to settle in at right guard. Because you remember, before Sewell came here, Robert Hunt was taking reps at right tackle. People were, oh, Robert Hunt's our right tackle. I said, no. You need to put him at right guard, and you need to draft Penei Sewell. Listen, Waddle was my number 1 receiver in that draft, and was the guy that I thought the Dolphins would want it, and was the guy I wanted the Dolphins to draft. But if they came down to receiver, but the player that I wanted, unquestionably, anyone who watches me or follow on this channel or follows me on X knows, it was Penei Sewell. Okay, missed that. You want even better? Who's number 3 on that list? Lane Johnson. What did they do? They selected Jordan over that guy. You had a chance at the top 3 tackles on ESPN's list voted by executives, coaches, and scouts, and you whiffed on all of them. And I go back to the Eagles. Since Andy Reid has been there, doesn't matter who the coach has been there, whether it's been Peterson, Sirianni, doesn't matter. They've never skimped on the offensive line. They figured it out under Andy Reid, and they made that a franchise foundational philosophy. The Ravens. Everyone talks about how good the 2000 Ravens defense was, and you're getting no argument from me, one of the greatest ever. But what happened? People forget. How good was Jamal Lewis that year? How good was that offensive line, and what has happened since? Doesn't matter whether it was going back to Brian Billick, whether it's been Harbaugh, they never skimp on the offensive line. It clicked for them, and they made that a franchise foundational philosophy. And I always go back to this. What hurts me and what really bothers me about Chris Grier is 2016, we had that light bulb moment. Ryan Tannehill had his best year. And if he didn't get hurt, we probably beat the Steelers in round 1. Jay Ajayi, right, becomes an absolute difference maker, becomes an absolute runaway freight train in the run game. We had the light bulb moment. Chris Grier was in the building. And what did he do? He's totally strayed away from that. And that's been an issue. We're going on 9 years later. We're still trying to figure out the offensive line. 9 years later after the fact of when we had the unicorns. And we're still trying to figure it out. That's an issue. That's a big issue. And I always talk about this. The old adage, games are won and lost in the trenches. Someone needs to hammer it into our general manager's head. Look at what the Kansas City Chiefs have done while they keep going back. Look at how good their defensive front seven has been, and then they did hit on some gems, some young gems in the secondary. But, you know, they didn't skimp on Chris Jones, right? Karlaftis. They built that front seven, and after that loss to the Bucs in the Super Bowl, when Mahomes was running for his life, they said, oh, we're not going through that again. Even the Bengals. Look at the effort and the financial and draft resources that they put into getting that offensive line right for Joe Burrow after he was getting now. A lot of the reason why he was taking a lot of hits in that Super Bowl run was because he wasn't making he wasn't making proper hot reads, and a lot of it was actually on him, not the offensive line. But they said, yeah, we're not risking it. And he's had some injury history. You know? Like, you look at teams like the Ravens, like the Steelers. Look at the Steelers, man. Look at the offensive linemen that they've drafted in the last few years. Right? Like, they have not skimped. They have not skimped on that offensive line. At all. At all. Right? I mean, it's just like, it's impressive. I'll tell you that much. They're another team that just, they don't screw around when it comes to building that offensive line. Last year, they took Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier with their first 2 picks. Then they took Mason McCormick in the 4th round. The year before, they took Broderick Jones. Think about that. And think about this. In 2023 and 2024, they spent a 14th overall pick, a 20th overall pick, a 51st overall pick, and a 119th pick. 4 of their picks. I'm not even going to count. Let's count Spencer Anderson at 251. So 5 of their picks. Do you know what that is? They made 14 picks over that span. So that's a little over a third of their picks were dedicated to the offensive line. And they all weren't cheap picks. A 14th, a 20th, and a 51st. I mean, 3 of those 5 were first rounders or second rounders. Remember how badly I wanted Zach Frazier? I tell you, if you listen to me about anything with the offensive line, listen to me this. Because one day I won't be here. Okay? So you'll have this in your mind and you'll always know the guys to gravitate towards you. Man, if the film is good or great and that offensive lineman, especially on the interior, is a former like state champion wrestler or really good wrestler like Zach Frazier, you need to that guy needs to be, you know, in your wheelhouse as a target. So I remember everyone last year wanted, you know, Jackson Powers Johnson. I wanted Zach Frazier. And Zach Frazier, I mean, let's be real here. He was fantastic last year. He was absolutely fantastic in year 1 for them. Right? He made the all-rookie team, the PFWA, the Pro Football Writers of America all-rookie team. He was fantastic last year. So, I'm just saying it's just, honestly, this is one of those things where I don't think it's going to change until we get another GM who takes it a little bit more seriously. So, and a lot is riding on, you better get this Patrick Paul pick right, brother. You know, you bet. I think Savaiinaea was the right pick, but the Patrick Paul one better work out. That's all I know. I think Savaiinaea, like I said in my prospect profile, I think the ceiling's a little bit higher for him than Robert Hunt, but you know, let's see what happens. Sign the man, get it sewn up so he can be in camp. But I do think they are on the right path. The other issue, and I've talked about why they haven't been able to build that offensive line depth properly, is think about all the assets they've traded away. Whether the draft picks, whether it's been for Tyreek, whether it's from Bradley Chubb, whatever the case may be, a lot of those picks could have been used to supplement the offensive line depth or find eventual starters so you wouldn't have had to go out and get a James Daniels. But you also got to hit on them. I think they're going to hit on Savaiinaea, but they whiffed on the trade up with Liam Eichenberg, especially when all of us and our grandmothers who were watching that draft live were saying, why are you taking this guy over Creed Humphrey? And, sure enough, Creed Humphrey is the far better pro. Now, what Ted Wynn really emphasized in that great article, he does a great job. Why we went over that article and why I respect him. He does legitimate film work. He knows what he's talking about. He's great. He's one of the best film guys in the mainstream media. He works for The Athletic. He's fantastic. Great follow. Now, speaking of the run game, the Miami Dolphins today, from Jonathan Jones of CBS, the Dolphins have promoted Chandler Henley, formerly a senior offensive assistant, to the run game specialist. Yale graduate along with head coach Mike McDaniel. Henley worked in sales and media before his 14-year coaching career. So, now Henley, he's been an assistant offensive line coach in Atlanta back in 2021 before he came to Miami as the assistant quarterbacks coach in 2022. Started off with the Tennessee Titans in 2018, where he was a quality control assistant. And, he's been promoted twice in 2 years. If you remember, last offseason, he was promoted from assistant quarterbacks coach to senior offensive assistant. So, now you got Henley as the run game specialist and Slowick as the senior passing game coordinator. So it's going to, we're hoping that this gives a little oomph to McDaniel and the run game. And this shows that they're taking it a little bit more seriously. I've told you what I was told privately, I was told that McDaniel sat down Jalen Wright and Devon Achane, basically in the exit meetings and said, you guys are going to be the best running back duo in the NFL this year. So clearly they're putting an emphasis on getting better in the run game. If James Daniels looks like the guy he was before the Achilles injury, if Jonah Savaiinaea starts to get comfortable real quick, and if Austin Jackson can stay healthy, and if Patrick Paul can give us competent play, we're cooking with fish grease here. But the problem is, I just named a lot of ifs. The only certainty we really have right now, let's be honest here, is Aaron Brewer, that we can have full, uncontested faith in. So, there's a lot of ifs, and you know what I say, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all live in a wonderful world. So, this is why I'm saying, you've got to get this depth taken care of. Are we going to be leaning on Josh Preby and Larry Borum and Liam Eichenberg? Those guys, if, one of the interior guys go down or one of the tackles can't play, or Keon Smith. These are names we don't want to hear. This is why I'd be throwing a little money at Will Hernandez and getting him in here. And if he gets cut, he gets cut. If he makes it, he makes it. So another thing I wanted to ask you guys, and put this in the chat. I want to know in the chat. Randy Moss recently talked about Tyreek Hill. And this is an excerpt from an article from David Furones. And I want you to look at what he says here about the Miami Dolphins. He says, as for the Dolphins on the field this season, Moss said, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Bringing Minka back, trading Jalen, with all the drama and things off the field that's been going on. I'm just looking for a big year for this offense, Tua and Tyreek mainly. So earlier in this article, Randy Moss said, if we're talking political, Jerry Rice is the best ever. But if we're talking physicality, I'm the best ever. So he was asked about Tyreek Hill and where his placement among the all-time receivers is. And Moss said Tyreek Hill is nowhere near all-time. Where he's at in today's game, Tyreek Hill is probably top 5. I'd put him top 5. I want to know in the chat, is Tyreek Hill one of the best all-time receivers to this point. I mean, you look at the yardage, you look at what he's doing. I mean, he's got the sixth most receiving yards in a single season since 2000. The 1,799 he put up in 2023, only legs behind Justin Jefferson, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Cooper Kupp, and of course Calvin Johnson's 1964 and 2012. Is, in your mind, is Tyreek Hill an all-time great? Let me know in the chat and in the comments below, all right? Guys, I'm going to get out of here. Rookies reported. We'll have more news this week. Thursday, I will be live with Neil. Until next time, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. We will catch you on the next one. Over 300 of you in the room. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Love each and every one of you, and I'll see you on the next one. Fins up, baby.